About 5 years ago, I lived downtown in a major city in the US. I've always been a night person, so I would often find myself bored after my roommate, who was decidedly not a night person, went to sleep. To pass the time, I used to go for long walks and spend time thinking. I've spent about 4 years like that, walking alone at night, and never once had the reason to feel afraid. I always used to joke with my roommate that even the drug dealers in this city were polite. But all of that changed in just a few minutes of one evening. It was a Wednesday, somewhere between 1 and 2 in the morning, and I was walking near a police-patrolled park quite a few ways from my apartment. It was a quiet night, even for a weeknight, with very little traffic and almost no one on foot. The park, as was most nights, was also completely empty. I turned down a short side street in order to loop back to my apartment when I first noticed him. At the far end of the street, on my side, was a silhouette of a man dancing. It was a strange dance, similar to waltz, but he finished each box with an odd forward stride. I guess you could say he was dance walking, headed straight for me. Deciding he was probably drunk, I stepped as close I could to the road to give him the majority of the sidewalk to pass me by. The closer he got though, the more I realized how gracefully he was moving. He was very tall and lanky and was wearing an old suit. He danced closer still until I could make out his face. His eyes were open wide and wild, head tilted back slightly, looking at the sky. His mouth was formed in a painfully white cartoon of a smile, and between the eyes and the smile, I decided to cross the street before he danced any closer. I took my eyes off him to cross the empty street. As I reached the other side, I glanced back, and then stopped dead in my tracks. He had stopped dancing and was just standing with one foot on the street, perfectly parallel to me. He was facing me but still looking skyward, smile still wide on his lips. I was completely and utterly unnerved by this, and I started walking again but kept my eyes on the man. He didn't move. Once I put about half a block between us, I turned away from him for a moment to watch the sidewalk in front of me. The street and the sidewalk ahead of me were completely empty. Still unnerved, I looked back to where he had been standing to find him gone. For the briefest of moments I felt relieved until I noticed him. He had crossed the street and was now slightly crouched down. I couldn't tell for sure due to the distance and the shadows, but I was certain that he was facing me. I had looked away from no more than 10 seconds, so it was clear that he had moved fast. I was so shocked that I stood there for some time, staring at him. And then he started moving towards me. He took giant, exaggerated, tiptoed steps as if he was a cartoon character sneaking up on someone, except he was moving very, very quickly. I'd like to say at this point that I ran away or pulled out my pepper spray or my cell phone or anything at all, but I didn't. I just stood there, completely frozen as the smiling man crept towards me. And then he stopped again, about a car length away from me, still smiling a smile, still looking to the sky. When I finally found my voice, I blurted out the first thing that came to my mind, and what I meant to ask was, "What do you want?" in an angry, commanding tone. What came out was a whimper, "What?" Regardless of whether or not humans can smell fear, they can certainly hear it, because I heard it in my own voice, and that only made me more afraid. But he didn't react to it at all. He just stood there, smiling. And then, after what felt like forever, he turned around, very slowly, and started dance walking away. Just like that. Not wanting to turn my back to him again, I just watched him go until he was far enough away that to be almost out of sight. And then I realized something. He wasn't moving away anymore, nor was he dancing. I watched in horror as the distant shape of him grew larger and larger. He was coming back my way, and this time he was running. I ran too. I ran until I was off the side road and back onto a better lit road with sparse traffic. Looking behind me then, he was nowhere to be found. The rest of the way home, I kept glancing over my shoulder, always expecting to see a stupid smile, but he was never there. I lived in that city for 6 months after that and never went out for another walk. There was something about his face that always haunted me. He didn't look drunk, he didn't look high, he looked completely and utterly insane, and that's a very, very scary thing to see. A man went to a hotel and walked up to the front desk to check in. The woman at the desk gave him his keys and told him on the way to his room there was a door with no number that was locked and no one was allowed in there. She explained that it was a storeroom and that it was out of bounds. She reminded him this several times before allowing him upstairs, so he followed the instructions of the woman at the front desk, going straight to his room and going to bed. However, the insistence of the woman had piqued his curiosity, so the next night he walked down the hall to the door and tried the handle. Sure enough, it was locked. He bent down and looked through a wide keyhole, and cold air passed through it, chilling his eye. What he saw was a hotel bedroom like his, but in the corner there was a woman whose skin was incredibly pale. She was leaning her head against the wall, facing away from the door, and he stared in confusion for a while. Was it a celebrity? The owner's daughter? He had almost knocked on the door out of curiosity, but decided not to. As he was still looking, the woman turned sharply and then he jumped back from the door, hoping she would not have expected that he had been spying on her. He crept away from the door and walked back to his room, but the next day he returned to the door and looked through the keyhole again. This time, all he saw was redness. He couldn't make out anything besides the distinct red color, unmoving. Perhaps the inhabitants of the room knew he was spying in the night before, so they decided to block the keyhole with something red. He felt embarrassed that he had made the woman so uncomfortable and hoped that she would not have made a complaint to the woman at the front desk. At this point, he decided to consult her for more information. After some gentle quizzing and the promise that the explanation would go no further than him, she finally said, "Well, I might as well tell you the story of what happened in that room. A long time ago, a man murdered his wife in there. We find that even now, people get very uncomfortable staying there, but those people were not ordinary. They were white all over, except for their eyes, which were red." One school day, a boy named Tom was sitting in class doing his math homework. It was 6 more minutes until after school, so he had a little bit of time to finish his homework. So, as he was doing his homework, something caught his eye. His desk was next to the window, so sometimes he would turn around to look at the grass and just the outside in general. As he was looking outside, however, he saw something that looked like a picture. When school was over, he ran to the spot where he saw the picture, and he ran as fast as he could so no one else could grab it. He picked it up and smiled. It had a picture of the most beautiful girl he had ever seen. She had a dress with tights on, red shoes, and her hand was formed into a peace sign with 2 fingers up. She was so beautiful he wanted to meet her, so he ran all over the school and asked everyone if they knew or have seen her, but everyone said no. So he was devastated. When he went home, he asked his older sister if he knew the girl, but unfortunately she also said no. It was kind of getting late after a while, so Tom walked up the stairs and placed the picture next to his bed on the bedside table and went to sleep. In the middle of the night, Tom was awakened by a tap on his window. It was like a nail tapping. He got scared, and after the tapping, he heard a giggle. He saw a shadow near his window, so he got out of his bed, walked towards the window, opened it up, and followed the giggling. By the time he reached it, it was gone. The next day, he asked his neighbors if they knew her, but everybody said sorry, no. When his mother came home, he even asked her, but she also said no, she'd never seen her. So he went to his room and placed the picture on his desk again and fell asleep. Once again, he was awakened by a tapping noise. This time, he took the picture with him and followed the giggling. He walked across the road and without looking, he didn't see a car coming, which accidentally hit him and he was dead on the spot. He still had the picture in his hand. The driver got out of the car and tried to help him, but it was too late. Suddenly, he also saw the picture and picked it up. He saw a cute girl holding up 3 fingers.